Next up, the head coach of the Charlottetown Islanders, Gordie Dwyer. Have a nice round of applause for Gordie. Great to have Gordie with us. I've got a chance to work with Gordie this year, though having not traveled on the road very often, perhaps once, as Gordie says. You know, I'm not a bit of a roadster here in the queue yet, but I certainly, hanging around Gordie, can appreciate the passion that he brings for his job, his dedication to the position that he holds, and his dedication to the organization as well. A firm believer of and supporter of major junior hockey here in PEI. He's here by choice. He's a non-native so-called Islander, but he's been here for now a number of years and has decided to retire post-NHL here on PEI, which speaks volumes about his support for the province. So it's great to have a guy like Gordie Dwyer heading the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League franchise here on PEI currently. Hopefully, he's here for a period of time and wins and then moves on to another challenge moving forward. That'll be a plus for Gordie and as well for this franchise as well. But Gordie, great to have you here. And I guess the opening question would be, as I said to Grant as well, but you are in the dressing room, the rest of us are not. When the season comes to an end and you reflect 24 hours, 48 hours post-final game against Halifax, and the disappointment, obviously, of not winning the series, which obviously would have been a tremendous challenge in the first place, but what did you reflect back over that 48-hour, 72-hour period, and what did you see inside that dressing room that you like about this franchise moving into the offseason and into training camp come August?
Well, first,
Thanks.
Thanks, Grant. Good one. I'll get you back. First, thanks for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to see everybody out here today, and I know on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, it's probably not everybody's first choice to sit in the rink, but to see so many people out here today, it's obviously a great testament to the good things going on here with the Charlottetown Islanders. To get back to your question, obviously you have a little bit of time after the season to kind of process, you know, what took place and evaluate your players and how they played within certain situations. And you know, you look back on the opportunity that we had to play against the champs. And, you know, we put ourselves in a good position this year where after Christmas we felt that, you know, with our young players, we gave them an opportunity to play in key situations. We gave them an opportunity to play valuable roles within the hockey team. And for them to be able to experience what it took to play in the playoffs and what it takes to be successful, I thought it was a big step for our hockey team moving forward. Our slogan was all year long, we work, we win, and I think that we started off with that kind of mindset in training camp, and you know, from there we went on, and you know, in the playoffs, why not us was chosen, and the reality is that why not us? You know, we've got some talent, we've got some young players. It was a great opportunity for those guys, without feeling the pressure of having to perform, just to go out and to be able to measure themselves against the champs. I think it was a great opportunity for our franchise moving forward. We made sure that the players understood what was needed to be successful. I thought at times we played very well. Obviously, at the end of the day, we're not playing and they're playing, so they did things the right way. I thought we did a lot of right things as well. It was a great opportunity for our players to measure themselves against the champs. It was a great experience for our hockey team, and we're going to use it in a positive manner moving forward.
Gordie, the foundation obviously is the youth and the strength of this franchise right now. And just a couple of comments. I'm going to go through the 4 or 5 key players here. What did you see in their growth from Christmas on to the end of the season as far as being key components for this team moving forward? Firstly, with goaltender Mason McDonald.
Well, Mason McDonald is a cornerstone of our franchise moving forward, and he's a 17-year-old goaltender that you know, had some experience last year in Bathurst, was good enough to make the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League in that goaltending position as a 16-year-old. Everybody that's sitting here today had an opportunity to watch that kid play. But for myself, having him join our hockey club after Christmas, there's always a transition period for the player, and he had such an initial impact on our hockey team with his starts to start. Then he went off. I think he had three really, really strong games initially with us. Had a chance to take off wearing the Islander colors to the Prospects game. I thought he went into the Prospects game with lots of confidence, played extremely well at the Prospects game, and I think that's where he really made a name for himself. People really start talking about Mason McDonald and his potential and where he's going to go as a player. He came back. I think there was a bit of a period where there was he had to adapt to the circumstances here in Charlottetown. He's still a kid. He had to change cities, move places, change schools, all that stuff. So again, we forget how young some of these guys are. But from there, he really took off, gave us some really good hockey down the stretch, and it wasn't an easy decision as a coach when you take what both goaltenders give you, and Eric Brassard gave us some solid minutes all year long and was a really, really good soldier for us. But I think that Mason really earned that opportunity to be our starter in the playoffs and truly did a really good job of it. For me, the biggest impact I think that Mason had and the biggest influence that he had not only on myself but on the rest of the hockey team was his preparation. And I think that preparation for a lot of hockey players is what separates you or potentially gives you an opportunity to separate yourself from the pack. And I liked his preparation before game. I liked his post-game reaction and how he worked, his focus throughout the series. And I think coming from the National Hockey League and seeing some of the top athletes and top players and what makes them potentially better than other guys, I think preparation has a lot to do with it, and Mason did an exceptional job in that form.
Looking at the blue line, Grant mentioned David Henley. He comes just post-Christmas as well. I really liked his physical presence, his ability to stand up not only for himself but for his teammates. He's a year younger than Mason McDonald. Luke Duchesne, as Grant as well alluded to, we had a tough chance really to evaluate him, but just at the end of the season in the playoffs gave us a bit of a glimpse that he's a guy that likes to lug the mail, and he doesn't mind joining the attack as the fourth wheel on the attack. He seems to have some confidence in that area, but Luke is a little tougher guy to perhaps talk about right now because we haven't seen as much about him. But again, Henley and Duchesne, what can you tell us about those two as far as their growth is concerned?
Well, they're two young, exceptional hockey players, both major junior players at 16. They've got some tremendous assets, both players, and skill. You look at David Henley, and I think that the impact that he had on our hockey team was very underestimated. I think that he really jumped in. We tried to insulate him a little bit initially as a 16-year-old coming into a new environment, but really David didn't need any insulation. He came in, he was ready to play, he was ready to face that challenge head on. He's a kid that grew up in Val-d'Or. His brothers played in Val-d'Or. He got drafted by Val-d'Or. He never really left the community. French-speaking kid. He jumps on a plane, ends up in Charlottetown, and he's ready to go. So that says a lot about David and his character and his personality. And I think that as the games went on, you could really see his personality shine through. He's a really tough, gritty kid. I think that he gets it. He's fortunate to be a younger brother of two other players that have played in the league, guys that have been drafted in the National Hockey League as well and have had exceptional careers in the major junior ranks. And he says he's the best and the toughest brother, so that goes kind of a long way for us. So really extremely happy with David and David's progress throughout the playoffs. He's one of our top guys. 16-year-old kid, brings a lot to the table. He's a tough, gritty, big, talented defenseman, so there's lots to be excited about. Luke Duchesne, he's a player throughout the Maritimes, not maybe necessarily in Prince Edward Island, but people in New Brunswick, where I'm from originally, have talked about for a long time. And Luke's a very talented young defenseman that's got a lot of upside. He's got strength, he's got size, but he's got great hockey sense as well. So for him to be able to come in, I think through his injury and then establishing himself in the league, I thought that he did a good job, especially in the second half of the second part of the season and throughout the playoffs, of trying to establish himself. And he played. He played for us, and him and David were both 16-year-old players that contributed to our success later in the season. So that's a positive sign moving forward.
Again, we're about 15 or 20 minutes away from opening up to you people for you people have your questions, so we'll get to that here momentarily. and again, you talk about Henley and Deschênes, there's a difference between being cocky and being confident, and you see the confidence in Henley, and that speaks volumes for this franchise again over the next couple of seasons, to have a guy like that at 6'4" manning your blue line and playing against the top competition in the queue, whether you're at home or on the road. And as we know, sometimes players play differently at home than on the road. Henley's not one of those guys. He's going to be a guy that's going to play the same way on the road. There's no doubt about that. But now looking across the top, when you have Sprong and Goulet and Kiley training camp last August, not that they weren't key pieces, but you didn't know an awful lot about them. You knew they were going to be good players, but then all of a sudden they become the go-to guys again after Christmas. What growth did you see in their game, just not on the ice, because we can see that, but in the dressing room as being part of the leadership group for this franchise moving forward?
Well, it's when you talk about those three players in particular, there's other players, and Grant alluded on it as well, where that it's a team game and it's a team concept. But when you've got some players like Goulet and Sprong and Kiley, they really embraced the opportunity they were given in the second half of the season. And I think they did a really good job throughout the year of finding an identity and building on that identity and then going from there. In hockey, I was told when I was a player a few years ago, I was given an opportunity to build on what kind of player I wanted to be. And I walked in, who was a coach of mine, his name's Alain Vigneault, who's coaching for the New York Rangers now, and I had an opportunity to play for him in junior hockey, and his message always left a significant mark on me, and because it influenced my career, it influenced not only my playing career, but wanting to be a coach and the way that I approach coaching as well. So I remember walking into his office, and the first time I got traded there, and there was 3 stools sitting side by side, walking into his office. So he said, "Come on in, Gordie." He says, "Welcome to the hockey team." But he says, "Before you sit down, I want you to hear me out." He says, "You see this stool over here?" He said, "If you're going to sit in that stool, that's the offensive stool." He said, "If you want to sit in that stool and you think you're an offensive player, you can sit down there. But if you're an offensive player, you better score a lot of goals." And he gave me some examples of guys that could score goals and guys that were offensive players. He says, "If not, don't sit in that chair." He said, "The one in the middle," he said, "if you're a defensive specialist, you can sit in that chair." And I said, "Well, you're thinking to yourself, where do I fit in?" He says, "To be a defensive specialist, it's not just because you can go out on the ice and keep the puck out of your own net." He says, "Guys like Guy Carbonneau that can produce offensively become really smart, obviously defensive players." He said, "If you fit that role," he said, "you can sit on that stool." And he said, "The last stool," he says, "if you think you're tough," he said, "you can sit in that stool." He says, "But if you think you're tough, there's one thing to think you're tough, but there's another thing to play a physical role and to be able to play it night in and night out and bring that for your hockey team and bring that example every night for your players." He said, "If you think you can sit in that chair," he says, "you better be tough every night." But he says, "Remember one thing." He says, "As a player, you got to pick a stool, because if you don't, you're going to fall through the cracks," right? So that's one thing that always landed on mine. I decided to pick the tough guy chair. I wish I was good enough to sit in your chair right now, but obviously I'm not. So those it left a mark on me. So when you talk about some of our players, Daniel Sprong, Goulet, Kiley, just to name a few, they're young guys. They got lots of potential, lots of opportunity, but I like the fact that they've kind of developed in their role. Daniel Sprong is going to be an offensive powerhouse. We know that. He worked on his game. He continued to produce throughout the season, regardless of if we had the depth offensively or players around him. He was still able to find the back of the net, still able to produce offensive opportunities. Alexander Goulet, I think there's so much to work with there. He did a great job of producing offense throughout the season for us, but we talk about being a 200-foot player. I think he's got the opportunity to continue to improve on the other side of the puck and be one of those guys, that can play both ends, play against top lines. Bring up a guy from a few years ago, Josh Curry. He might have that opportunity with maybe more offensive upside, and Josh had 100 points in his 20-year-old season, so there's lots of upside there, and to bring a guy up named Cameron Kiley joining the league as a 15-year-old and being the youngest guy in the league 2 seasons ago, that's a feather in his cap just to be that guy, let alone the fact that he's from Charlottetown and he was playing in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. But for him, in the second part of the season, I think Cam did a really good job of finding an identity as a hockey player. And throughout the playoffs. He's a thorn to play against. He's a thorn in another team's side. He's a capable shutdown centerman with offensive upside. He's tough to play against. He's in your face. He's a smart hockey player. He can play on the power play, play on the penalty killing, and he brings a lot. He brings a lot of character, and he's always ready to play, and he's always ready to go. So I think that he's developed himself into that role for us, which is a huge asset. So hats off to the players for finding that opportunity in that role and developing in it. And obviously, there's a long way to go, but at least they've started that process.
When we leave here today and we drive home, you obviously, if you take the foot off the pedal, people are blowing by you. As a coach, what's your role here in the off season to make sure that there's just not a satisfactory level to the season for Sprong and Goulet and Kiley, and that these guys are going to be factor players even more so next year than this year? What's your role as a coach to make sure that that happens?
Well, it's our role as an organization, and regardless of the coach or a general manager or a trainer or anybody else, it's our role to support the players. But the one thing leaving is that once the dust settles a little bit and we had an opportunity to have our exit meetings, you have to take full advantage of that. And I thought we did a good job of evaluating everybody's season and where they were at, and again, using that word projection and where they can go. And I think it's important as a coach to get those players to believe that, but to get them to understand how important it is. And I think leading by example for a lot of the players, about being at the rink and having that enthusiasm around the arena and just being ready to work every day, I think that has an impact on the players, and I think that they understand where the expectations are next year moving forward. I know the expectations are higher for everybody moving forward, but let alone the fact that individually for the players, we want more, we want them to want more, and to be able to achieve that, they have to work extra hard, and they have to work hard when people aren't watching them. I think that's the challenge, where you have to get these players to believe in themselves as individuals, work hard throughout the summer, be excited about their opportunity here in Charlottetown, want to be an Islander, want to make the team better, want to make the team stronger, use that as motivation and a focus throughout the summertime, and come back ready to challenge for a spot in August.
You've talked with your assistant coaches, Luke Beck and Connor Cameron, obviously, but as the head coach of this franchise, when camp starts in August through September and the first official season opener next October, when you look at the draft coming at the end of May, obviously the inside information here. What's your vision for this hockey club in October? What do you expect to see on the ice here in Charlottetown as a Charlottetown Islanders lineup?
Well, again, my expectations as a coach are obviously pretty simple. Hard work is non-negotiable, and that's a key to success in anything that you do. And we want to surround ourselves with good people that want to be involved with the game, and players that understand that. And I think that hard work is the base for everything. And if the players bring that mentality and they're ready to compete in training camp and they're ready to push for spots, and the reality is that we can talk about some of our top-end players. There's a long road for these players to continue the development, to continue that process so they are better players and we are a better hockey team moving forward. But they want to look at this as an opportunity for them, and the opportunity will present itself if they do the work. So my goal as a coach and my mandate is to make sure that everybody's coming back, they're focused, but they're ready to compete. When the puck drops, that's the game of hockey. We can talk about it. We can talk about people's strengths. We can break down players and talk about what kind of players they are and what kind of players they can be. But at the end of the day, when you drop the puck, it's about compete. So hard work, compete for us. Training camp, I'm excited about getting everybody back. Hopefully they're bigger. Hopefully they're stronger. We're going to make sure that we do our due diligence this summer, that everybody's working that way. But next August, when the puck drops, guys got to be ready to roll.
Have a nice round of applause for head coach Gordie Dwyer.